First of all, very Happy New Year to everyone. This is our first study for 2018. It's going to be a very good year. This year begins quite cold, about 22 degrees C, nice weather to work. So we begin this new year by studying SD 45.7. There are two parts, 7a, 7b. This is the Sela Sutta. Like a number of other important suttas, this sutta is found in a couple of places. Sela Sutta M92, so the first version is found in Majjhima Nikaya. It's also found in S and the Sutta Nipata, chapter 3, Sutta 7, they're kind of identical. And this sutta is quite long, so you've got what's called the ancient part and the later part. The older part are the verses, and the verses are also found in the Theragatha, elders' verses. So they are, of course, Theragathas are all named after the elder. So we have Sela Theragatha, THA 818 to 841, so quite a number of verses there. So Sela is the name of a person, a devotee if you like, a practitioner, not a monk. Interestingly, he's a follower of what is called a part-time wanderer. So this is something anomalous, out of the ordinary. You don't usually have part-time holy men, so this is one of them. It is a part-time holy man or this part-time wanderer is called Keniya. Keniya. He is a very rich man. He's got land and cattle. So he became a holy man so that he won't be taxed. So this sounds very familiar. And so in the daytime he goes around dressed in his religious wherewithal and hairstyle. Then in the evening he puts on his civis, we call it, the dress of a lay person, and he lives his daily life. So, but then something happened. He meets the Buddha. So this is where when we meet someone like the Buddha, when we meet the Buddha or someone like the Buddha, you will change. Something inside you will change. We realize something deeper, something special inside us. And this is a very important aspect of life. Imagine if we live our life from birth to death and we don't change at all. Then we're like a stone, Even animals develop. Even animals, you see them growing. And sometimes on the internet you can even see animals showing emotions, especially when another animal dies. Of course, it's hard to know how real these pictures are, but I suppose it's possible that animals do have a sense of death. There are even, like, I saw one where this dog saw some fish on the ground and he used his nose to push water over the fish. I've got the idea that so this dog's intelligent enough. He knows that fish need water, so he uses his nose, and it was kind of swishing and pushing water towards the fish, but the fish already dead. So you begin to see that there is a sense of awareness of life, of emotions, even in animals. So this gives us a good idea that we're all interrelated, the different beings. So for that reason, life is precious. So to be able to change is a very important aspect of human development. It is because we can change that Buddhas arise in the world. The Buddha points the way to us and say, well, this is the way. You take this path, you will evolve, you become what is called a true individual. Unlike many other religions, the Buddha points the way out to us. The Buddha says, okay, this is the way to go. The Buddha teaches us to see, how to see reality, but he doesn't really tell us what to see. There are two reasons why he doesn't tell us what to see. Number one is whatever that can be told are already found in the suttas. And in a sense that's good enough. It's also bad enough. Good enough in the sense that if you are full of faith and you are full of wisdom, you are willing to follow the teachings of the sutta very carefully, not reading too much into it, but reading the suttas as the Buddha's teaching, then you get very good information about what the Buddha teaches. The second reason why the what is a bit problematic is because there is no what. There's nothing really the sutta is teaching us. Now, of course, when we talk like that, people will say, "Oh no, what's the point of learning the suttas, right?" But it doesn't mean the sutta are useless. It just means that let's put it this way. I like the analogy of music. You learn music, okay? Of course, you may already have some musical qualities before. Then you learn music, and you become better with your music. You begin to understand the mechanics of music. You begin to understand the harmony of music, melody of music, and so on and so forth. In other words, you're able to talk better about music. You begin to understand how the sounds and the notes work and style and so on. If you have musical talent but you do not know music, you do not know the suttas, you are, in a sense, incapacitated. You do not know why you are good. You do not know how to tell people what you know. You do not know how to kind of record this goodness that you are, this musician that you are. So it's important. Not only you are a musician, in other words, you have this ability to change, this innate goodness, if you like, and you know music. You study the suttas. When you combine the two, you become a better musician. So it's not studying the musical notes that make you a good musician. There is this music quality in you. The music knowledge helps you to kind of have a better idea of what's going on. And then you produce nice music, people listen. So if someone asks, how do you produce such nice music? And how do you answer such a question? So this is where there are some questions the Buddha won't answer, which the suttas do not answer, and I think as unawakened teachers we should not be foolish enough to try to answer either. Of course the intellectuals try to answer, and of course they need to answer because it's their job, otherwise they go out of a job. So that's another area altogether. The point is, early Buddhism is experiential. You study the suttas to change yourself, to become a better person. And these two suttas, the one written on the board, Sela Sutta, and then the other one is the Keniya Jatila Vattu, found in the Vinaya, are about how two people change when they meet the Buddha. The first is a holy man. From being an insincere person, he became a sincere person. And then this Sela is his devotee, who is a faithful person, who even became better, became saints. They all became saints in manner of speaking. So let's look at what happened to them. So let's look at the translation. What page is your translation? Sela Sutta? 66, is it? Is that correct?
Discourse to Sela.
Okay, so the starting opens like most of the suttas, shows the Buddha traveling. Let me just read the title first. Sela Sutta, the discourse to Sela. M92 or SN 3.7. Thus have I heard. At one time, the Blessed One was walking or peregrinating by stages in Aṅguttarâpa with a large community of monks numbering 1,250 of them. So this is somewhere in the northern India. So this is quite a big group, 1,250. With such a big number of monks, so we know this is a little later in Buddha's life, probably the second half of the second period of the Buddha's ministry, perhaps. In fact, the Sela Sutta has got the early part, which is mostly the prose, introduction, and then you have the older part, which are the verses. So you see here the Buddha traveling. He's like a what do you call that, itinerant teacher. He moves around. The idea of moving around is to make sure the Dharma is propagated over a wide area of India. Imagine the Buddha traveling when he was much younger and stronger. The area of like Singapore and mainland Malaya. Imagine the Buddha walking right up to Sela Sutta and coming down. It takes quite some time, months. So as he moves along, he would teach, right? I mean, we're talking about this the day before internet communication, even telephones. So, moreover, we don't need telephones, internet, because this one is the direct communication. You meet the teacher, you talk to the Buddha, and that's very important. And you can look for him, of course, find out where he is, and people will tell you, and you can go up to him, learn something, meditate, and become an arahat, perhaps. Alright, so here is the Buddha, wandering in the northern part of India, and then we come to the scenario where the protagonist appears, section 2. Now the method ascetic Keniya heard, it is said that the recluse Master Gautama, a Sakya son, who has gone forth, and so on. So this is the stock passage showing that the Buddha is already well known at the time. And this method ascetic, in other words, they keep their hair long, they don't wash it, and his name is Keniya, so he hears of the Buddha in living outside the market town of that country called, the market town is called Āpaṇa. So he's very curious, he wants to meet this Buddha, right? So he goes to section 3. So he goes to see the Buddha. They first exchange greetings, and the Buddha gives him a Dhamma talk, okay, section 3.2. And of course he's very happy, and then he invites the Buddha for a meal on the next day, 3.3. You can see the invitation there. It says, "May Master Gautama, along with the community of monks, accept a meal from me tomorrow." So you see, he's a meditative ascetic, but he's a man of means. He's able to offer dana to the Buddha. But the Buddha was silent. The first time he invites the Buddha, he didn't say anything. Well, actually, Buddha said something. The Buddha says, look at 3.4. The Buddha replies, "Great indeed, Keniya, is the community of monks, 1,250 in number." Okay, so this is the first time. So the Buddha is telling this meditative ascetic, are you sure you're able to serve so many monks, 1,250? Now, we have to wonder, why did the Buddha ask this question? Number one, what are the facts? Always look for the facts. They're all there in the sutta. So you just have to be aware what's going on. This is where, as I said, if you study literature, it helps. If you are a literary critic, it helps. So we see this method ascetic. How many method ascetics in the suttas do you know come to the Buddha to offer dana to the Buddha? I can't remember anyone else. Keniya is one of those very rare people. So the Buddha is asking him, are you sure? Then he says, yes, I'm sure. The second time, he invites the Buddha. And then he tells the Buddha, I'm very devoted to Brahmins. So this is another issue. He follows the Brahmanism. So the Buddha again says, Keniya, now we have 1,250 monks, and you are so devoted to the Brahmins. You are sure you want to invite us for dana tomorrow? Again, we ask, why did the Buddha ask this? So here the Buddha is saying, okay, now if you feed the monks, what would the Brahmins say? You are sure that's all right? Okay, so these are many other aspects of the question, the ramifications that we've got to consider. Again, Keniya says, yes, I would like to invite you. I am a devotee of the Brahmins. So this is where the Buddha wants to make sure that Keniya knows what he's doing. And you find this kind of situation always there. The Buddha is socially savvy, he's very careful about how people invite the monks, and so on. Yeah? But remember, despite all this great care the Buddha takes, he does get into embarrassing, to us it's embarrassing situations at times, where, for example, nobody offers dana to him, or even after a really good long Digha Nikaya talk, none of the congregation even went through any spiritual change. And of course, usually Mara gets the blame for preventing people from changing. But whatever it is, it just shows that the Buddha is not like a mechanical teacher, where he just teaches everyone's got enlightened. It's not like that. So that there is this human aspect of the Buddha, if you like. All right, so Keniya is very sure, is very certain of being able to host the Buddha and the monks. So the next day, the Buddha visits him. Now this sutta is interesting. It tells us how Keniya prepares the meal. Right? So you begin to see a kind of social development here. The story here is telling us how the people offer food to the monks. Look at 4.3, section 4.3. So he arrives in his ashram, his hermitage. Upon arriving at his ashram, he addressed his kinsmen and blood relatives, friends and companions thus. Listen to me, good kinsmen and blood relations, friends and companions. The recluse Gautama, along with his community of monks, has been invited by me for a meal tomorrow. Please help around with the menial tasks. So they all said yes, and then see how they prepare. It's a very interesting little passage here, 4.4. Some dug ovens in the ground, others split wood, some washed bowls and vessels, others set up the water pots, some laid out the seats. And the method ascetic Keṇiya himself prepared the pavilion. Right? So we have this big event, okay, which is going to happen the next day. And then, okay, so this is what's called the Keṇiya cycle, a story about how Keṇiya meets the Buddha and decides to offer dana to the Buddha. So there's this big preparation. They do it overnight, whole night. So, because you see, they're offering the Buddha a morning meal. All right, morning meal probably, let's say, between sunrise to say 9 o'clock. So they prepared the whole night, and it's we're talking about 1,250 monks. Can you just imagine how many monks can sit in this hall, and then you just imagine the figure. So it's a huge place. There's even a special pavilion built for them. Then comes along a brahmin, who is Keṇiya's devotee. Okay, now remember, Keṇiya is a part-time this method ascetic, but he has a devotee. called Sela, the brahmin Sela. Sela, by the way, means someone who is strong like a rock, okay? So in English, his name would be Peter, by the way. Very interesting, huh? Okay, so section 5. At that time, the brahmin Sela was living in Āpaṇa, so he's a kind of local person. He was a master of the three Vedas, and he knows all these Brahmanical things, and of course he also is able to read signs. He's able to read a person's character, whether it's going to be Buddha or not. So he has 300 Brahmin youth as his students. So he's one of those Brahmanical teachers who will teach his students to recite mantras and so on. So he visits his teacher, Keniya, and he sees this busyness, this preparation going on. So he's wondering what's going on, and he asks, 7.2. 7.2, seeing the method ascetic, he said this to him. What now? Is Master Keṇiya receiving a groom or receiving a bride? Okay, these are the two aspects of weddings in ancient India. One is called receiving the groom, the other is receiving the bride. Either you are giving away a son or a daughter. Or preparing a great sacrifice. Or maybe he has invited King Bimbisara, and it's a big group here, big occasion, the Raja of Magadha and his army for a meal. Then Keṇiya says, no, none of those. I'm inviting the Buddha to come over. And here we are told he actually says the qualities of the Buddha. You know, the Itipiso Gatha, it says that the Buddha is famous, he's an Arahat, and so on and so forth. Now something happens to Sela. He only hears one word. And what is that word? Buddha. The moment he hears Buddha, it's like this spark is lit. He suddenly almost like woke up, so to speak. Okay? All right, let's look at this. Section 9. He says, Sela says, did you say Buddha, sir? And then Keṇiya replies, I said Buddha, Sela. And then he's so excited, so happy, he says this, he asked 3 times, did you say Buddha, sir? And again, Keṇiya replies, yes, I said Buddha, sir. Okay, in this case, he said only twice, not 3 times. So he's very happy when he hears the word Buddha. And section 10, he says, this sound, Buddha, is very difficult to be heard in the world. And so he's a sign reader. So this sign reader, sign 32 marks of the body, apparently is a late addition to the suttas. My understanding is that this myth or this idea of the 32 marks is not found in the early suttas, the earlier ones. It's found a bit later, maybe added in by the monks, even possibly after the Buddha has passed away, we do not know. You see, there are some mysteries about this teaching. Although it's mentioned, it is found in the Brahmanical teachings, scholars are unable to locate anywhere in the Brahmanical teachings external evidence, in other words, of this kind of tradition. So in other words, it is purely a Buddhist tradition, and the later teachers claim that it's found as a popular tradition. I think what is meant here is possibly, it could be the influence of Alexander's presence in India because of this arrival of the Greeks, this huge army. Can you imagine this impending invasion? So just imagine the psychological impact that this great army of Alexander, and Alexander himself as a charismatic figure, has on the Indian religious people, because Alexander is treated like a god. In fact, to the locals, the countries that invaded, treat him like a god. And it's possible that Āpaṇa himself imagined he's a god. So, for example, when we bow down to the Buddha image today, you can even say it is because of Alexander the Great, not because of the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha says, don't create images of me. But it is the Greeks who love beautiful images. They became Buddhists, or they're influenced by Buddhism, and then the great artists made Buddha to look like Apollo, and they start putting in all their gods like Hercules became the thunderbolt bearer, or Zeus, the thunderbolt bearer became Vajrapani, and then you got someone else, the lotus bearer became Padmapani, and later became Avalokitesvara. So you have this evolution of the gods. And many of these artistic aspects came from the Greeks. So you can imagine how much we are today influenced by the Greeks in our ritual life as a Buddhist. So anyway, so we see here, coming back to Sela, he's able, according to the sutta, to read marks of the Buddha. So here we can say that this Sela, he is interested in the charisma of the Buddha. That's one way we can look at this story. Just even today, you find a majority of Buddhists would say, this teacher is like this, like that. Number one, they might say, this teacher looks so old, and when they say old, they're saying, wow, he looks very venerable. He must be awakened, he must be an arahat because he's so old. So you have this kind of reaction. But if you study sociology of religion, we're talking about charisma. The devotee, through his faith, is attributing charisma to the teacher, to the monk. Another person may say, look at this monk, he's wearing forest robes, and he only eats one meal a day, he does not touch money, and so on. Again, all these attribution of charisma from the laity to the monk. And what does this mean? It means you attribute power. You transfer power to this other person. You see this person as powerful. And that is why the Buddha made a number of rules. For example, the monks are not supposed to declare they have attained whatever kind of states, because the lay people will misconstrue all these things, and if the monks are not honest enough, or the monks are not strong, they're weak, and they fall for such gullibility and obsequiousness, then you have very bad situation here. And today we have this problem of monks and money. Almost every monk touches money, but someone will say, I don't touch money, but they're the ones who have more money than other monks who so-called touch money. So the problem is, all these are used as sources of charisma. So a very wise Buddhist practitioner will not judge a teacher, a monk, or a nun by their external looks, or even by the way they talk. But he will survey overall how the teacher behaving in body, speech, and mind, the teachings, the behavior. Okay. For example, it's really a tricky thing, religion. I'm working on a reflection this morning on something about do your homework. The heading is do your homework. In other words, as Buddhists, we have to study the suttas ourselves, practice, look for answers, do not rely on personalities, do not have this guru syndrome. If we attribute too much charisma to a teacher, we are spoiling the teacher, we are preventing the awakening of that teacher. So this is where to do your homework means you have to practice yourself. And if you see a monk or a nun doing very good practice, then you're inspired by that example and you practice. And when you talk with this monk or nun, You know this person is a true renunciant, and you feel at peace, you feel this joy, and you can sense this other teacher is also practicing. And if you can do this, then you are in the presence of the Buddha. And it's a wonderful feeling to experience. So we see Sela, in a sense, going through that, but he starts off like many of the modern devotees who attribute charisma to the Buddha. So he looks at the Buddha and says, wow, he has all these 32 marks, he's able to, somehow the Sutta says, oh, the Buddha projected into his mind, the missing 2 marks. So he's able to see the Buddha as the ideal man. Okay? So the 32 marks, why are they so dramatic? Why are they so important? Once you come to a stage where a religion is very developed, there is competition. You have the Buddha and the monks. Imagine the Buddha and the monks having been around for more than 20 years or 40 years even. All right? Now the Buddha taught for 45 years, okay? Let's say we divide into half, let's say about 20 years, which is quite a long time. After Buddha and Buddhism has been around for 20 years, you can imagine the Buddhists have so many monasteries, and the monks are well respected all over India. And that means a lot of people who want to join the Buddhist monastic system. That means there are lots of those who are there for the ride. They just go there to have an easy life. There are lots of bad monks and bad nuns. That's why you have the Vinaya rules. And the Buddha has to make more of such rules. Then, on the other hand, you have also many other religions that are coming up, and there are stories about how the wanderers, especially, very jealous of the Buddha's success, the success of the monks. They go to great lengths to try to discredit the Buddha, even committing murder and so on. So you can imagine there is this worldly aspect of religion. So one of the ways which the Buddhist teachers try to promote Buddhism is to use myths to present the Buddha. One of the very powerful, very dramatic myth is that of the great man, Mahapurusa. As I said, the only way I can think of an antecedent, historical antecedents, probably the story of Alexander the Great, who is the ideal great man, if you like. So I've done a separate study on this. You can study it in the Lakhana Sutta translation. So the 32 marks show the Buddha to be an ideal human, the perfect man who is to be king of the whole world, so to speak. He is the Chakravarti, the ruler of the world disc, the world emperor, like Alexander. And he has all these great qualities, right? So, especially the 7 jewels. So this is listed here. See? So look at section 10.2. So Sela is very excited. They say, do you know who Buddha is? So the Buddha, someone with this quality of a great man, has only 2 destinies. So he knows this famous prophecy, first made by Asita and then the 108 brahmins and so on. So it says this great man, this Mahapurusa, has only 2 destinies. If he remains at home, he will be king of the world. He will be the world monarch, Chakravarti. If he leaves home, if he becomes a holy man, he will become a world teacher. Right? So here we have the Buddha, who is the world teacher. So it's a great thing to have him here. If he were here, Sela mentions, okay, if he remains in the world, he'll be a great king, and he will have 7 jewels. Right? So these are the regalia or the qualities of the great man as the world ruler. Number one, he has the wheel jewel, the Chakaratana. Now this wheel jewel is a mysterious wheel. I don't really know what it is. We take it as a wheel. So the suttas tell us that the wheel arises in the sky. So it shows that this person will be king. What is this wheel? Is it a star? Is it actually some sign? We are not exactly told. So it's a kind of myth. And there are often you hear this kind of stories with the kings. When they change a religion, some kind of miraculous event, some kind of sighting appears in the sky. So here you have this wheel appearing in the sky. So this is the first sign that he is going to be a world ruler. The wheel jewel. So this word jewel can also translate as treasure, ratana. It's a quality that shows this person is going to be world ruler. Number two, he has this elephant jewel. Now this elephant is the army, part of like the modern tanks. And it's not any elephant. It's a very strong elephant, a very powerful war elephant. And not only that, this elephant is able to fly. The sutta says that if the king lies, he gets up in the morning, he sits on the elephant and zoom, it goes off. Of course, today we do have flying elephants, but this is the Disney movies, So we do have modern versions of flying elephants. What's all this telling us? It's just telling us that this king is going to be very powerful. In the modern idea of the army, you have the airplanes, the air force, which can fly. Right? Number three, you have the horse jewel. And this horse again, Alexander had his Bucephalus, alright, Bucephalus, meaning bull head. And this horse is a very intelligent horse, and when Alexander reached near somewhere halfway on his journey towards Asia, in Asia, his horse was killed in one of the wars, and he was really grieved, and he actually set up a shrine for his horse. So his horse was worshipped like a god. So imagine how important the horse is to Alexander. The horse is also important to the Buddha. We must not forget when the Prince Siddhartha or when the Bodhisattva left home, when he renounced the world, his first vehicle was a horse, Kantaka. Okay? Kantaka means thorn. Okay? So Kantaka carried the Bodhisattva and Channa across 3 kingdoms. So it goes far away and then renounced the world. So the horse is a very important figure in ancient mythology, in ancient religion. And this horse also can fly. So you have this, and flying horse is not just limited to Indian stories. The flying horse is very famous in Arabic stories too, in the Arabian Nights. Then the next jewel is the gem jewel. So this is a kind of a very big precious stone. So apparently this jewel gives off light. It's almost like some alien story, right? Some superior alien comes from another planet and he has this very powerful jewel. And according to legend, this jewel is able to shine at night so that the whole village will think it is day. And the army is able to fight because of this light. It's almost like fighting with floodlights, Like today, what's the fighting going on? What do we do today? We have football matches with all the floodlights in the stadium. So you have this the jewel, the gem jewel. Then you have this human aspect of the world ruler. Okay, we are in section 10.2. All right. What page are we now?
69.
69, okay. Section 10.2, now we have section, brackets 5, the woman jewel. So you have this king, he has a queen. Right? So his life is complete, in other words. So she's the most beautiful woman in the world, and she's described in some detail how perfect she is as a woman and so on. Now this made me think, how powerful these women become, the wives of kings and presidents and prime ministers, And I'm also wondering, to what extent do they influence state affairs? I mean, the power behind the throne, right? So sometimes whether it's better for a bachelor to be a king or something. Anyway, here we have the world monarch and the queen, okay? But in the stories, the world monarch is always shown to be someone very self-determined, a very powerful person. Even the queen will respect him. And then you have number 6, the house lord jewel. Okay, this house lord jewel is like an advisor. He's more of a finance minister. So you need money to run the army. So this house lord jewel, Gahapati Ratana, he's able to locate treasures. He knows where the money is. So it's very important to the king, source of his wealth. And number 7 is the commander jewel. This is the last, number 7. He runs the army. Right? So it's sort of right arm of the king. So he's the one fighting the wars and so on. Right? Now you remember the story of Bimbisara's first meeting with the renunciant Siddhartha. After Siddhartha has left home, he goes into Rajagaha for arms. King Bimbisara sees the young Bodhisattva. He was about 29 years old then, and he at once recognizes this is no ordinary person. He walks royally. He walks like someone of breeding. So the king Bimbisara at once recognized Siddhartha. In my recent writing of the miraculous life of Gautama Buddha, I learned that Bimbisara and Siddhartha were actually childhood friends too. So imagine when he sees his old friend, 29 years old, walking in the streets, although he's bald-headed, he would still recognize him. So he comes down. So he asks his men to follow the recluse Gautama. Then he meets up with him and offers him the position of the commander-in-chief of his army. So he tells the Bodhisattva, why don't you join me? Right? I will reward you richly. Take charge of my army. So here we see King Bimbisara getting ready to extend his empire. And he needs a good commander, and who better than Prince Siddhartha? So, of course, Siddhartha already by then said, no, I've already decided to renounce the world. So thanks, but no thanks. Then Bimbisara says, okay, in that case, can you please at least come back and visit me first once you have found the answer, once you have awakened. So this is a friendship strengthens in spirituality. Okay? So these are the 7 jewels. Right? All right, so the Sela is very impressed. So he brings his 300 students to see the Buddha, and he's able to see all the marks of the Buddha. Right? And he's very impressed. And so then what happens? He goes to the Buddha and he has a conversation. Let's look at section 16. Now we come to the Sutta Nipata verses. He tells the Buddha, he praises the Buddha. Fully complete is your body, radiant, well-formed, lovely to behold. Golden is the Blessed One's complexion. of pure white teeth, heroic in effort. Right? So this verse is found in the Sutta Nipata as well as Tera Gatha. So here we see Sela recognizes the Buddha as the ideal human. Okay? These are human qualities which are not important to the Arahats anyway. And then in the next verse, Sela continues, for whatever of a man well born, those marks that be, they are all on your body, the marks of the great man. Right? So he declares, you are the great man. What's happening here? We see Sela attributing charisma to the Buddha. He says, you are a great man. Okay? Of course, the Buddha doesn't need it. The Buddha doesn't say, oh, I don't need your charisma to make me great. That's not what it's all about. But anyway, Sela has faith. He says, well, this is how you look like to me. The next verse, clear are your eyes, fair is your face, large or perfect, straight. Okay, this large Brahma, kind of like he looks godly, okay, and straight. In other words, he looks elegant. You see those royalties, they're trained to walk straight, stand straight, and splendid. Here, splendid like a flame. The ancient Indians regard flame as something precious. You need flame for a lot of things, like for food, for warmth, and so on. In the midst of a community of recluses, blazing like the sun. In the next verse, now he comes closer to the Buddha's qualities. A monk, good, and the word good here and beautiful have the same Pali word, good or beautiful to look at, with skin resembling gold, and this is repeated, right? So you see the Buddha as someone radiant. Okay? But what is the ascetic state to you? One of such excellent appearance. You are worthy of being a king, a wheel turner, the bellwether of warriors, the leader of warriors, a conqueror with a fourfold force, supreme lord of Jambunada. Okay. Jambunada is ancient name for India. He says that someone like you can even be the conqueror of the whole of India. Noble princes and kings will be your vessels or tributaries. The King of Kings, Lord of men, rule Gautama. Right? So it's almost like he's saying, you can be a world emperor. So why don't you be one? Then the Buddha replies, a king am I, Sela, said the Blessed One, Supreme Dharma-raja, the King of Truth. By Dharma, I turn the wheel, a wheel that rolls not back. So the Buddha replies, well, I don't need to be king, I've already won. And my wheel is the Dharma wheel. Right? So you have the Dharma wheel and you have the jewel wheel. Right? In modern politics, you have what's called the state and the church, if you like. Okay? So you have the wheel of power and the wheel of Dharma. Right? So these are two aspects. The wheel of the Dharma means those monks have given up challenging the king, having to do with power. So if a monk, for that reason, monks should not take part in politics, because they have given up the wheel of power. So if you really want to practice the Dharma, these are the things we should bear in mind. Alright, so the Buddha replies that one verse, and then Sela continues. Sela says, we're quite loquacious, quite talkative. Sela says, section 18, verse 18, you claim to be self-awakened, thus said Sela the Brahmin, the supreme Dharma-raja. By Dharma, is the wheel turned? Thus you say, Gautama. But who is the master's general? The disciple who goes the teacher's way, and who will after you keep turning the wheel that has been kept rolling by you. Alright, so here he's asking the Buddha, okay, you say you're a king, I mean you may be a Dhamma king, but who's your general? Okay? And who's going to continue after you? Who's your successor? Alright, so this is a similar question that worldly people would ask. Like for example, King Ajatasattu's minister asked Ananda similar questions after the Buddha has passed away. He asked Ananda, okay, now that the Buddha has passed away, who is in charge? How do you organize things? Right? So here the question is asked while the Buddha is still alive. Okay, the Buddha replies, turn is the wheel by me, Sela, said the Blessed One. The Supreme Dhamma wheel, Sariputta, turns it after me, or turns it as I do, taking after the Tathagata. Now this verse is quite problematic. We cannot take this to mean that Sariputta is the Buddha's successor, because you remember Sariputta predeceased the Buddha, right, by I think a few weeks at this. So here, when the Buddha says Sariputta teaches following me, he means following in the sense of following the teaching. Okay, that he is like me. The monk who, in a sense, succeeds the Buddha, only in a sense, right? Not in a hierarchical sense, but in the Dhamma sense, is Mahakassapa. Mahakassapa is the eldest, respected as the eldest after the Buddha. So anyway, the Buddha is simply answering Sela's question and say, well, Sariputta is my general. Okay? He didn't ask who's the treasurer. The treasurer is Ananda, of course. Yeah? Then the Buddha continues, what is to be known has been known. What is to be cultivated has been cultivated. What is to be abandoned has been abandoned by me. Therefore, Brahmin, awaken am I. Here the Buddha summarizing the teachings, right, especially the Four Noble Truths. And then the Buddha continues, describing the nature of an Arahat. Rid of any doubt in me. He tells Sela, clear, don't have any doubts about me. Resolve yourself, Brahmin, with faith. Ever difficult to see is the self-awakened one. Right? So it's true, it's difficult to see the Buddha, but have no doubt, I am the Buddha. Difficulties for those in the world to find their appearance ever difficult. That self-awakened one am I, Brahmin, the perfect doubt remover. So here the Buddha is declaring, I am teacher. Right? Now you must understand this word Buddha is not a status thing. So if the Buddha says, I am Buddha, it's just like maybe a teacher saying, I'm a Dhamma teacher. So the Buddha is simply declaring, yes, I am what you say. In this sense, the Buddha. A peerless dart remover. Okay, so the dart is said to be a source of pain, so he removes the source of pain. Not just treating the symptoms, but a radical cure. Curing the problem at the root. Okay. Then the Buddha continues and says, having become perfect, unequal, crusher of Mara's hosts, having overcome all enemies, I rejoice everywhere, free from fear. So here the Buddha is reflecting Sela's vocabulary of power. Because Sela sees the Buddha and said, you can be king, So the Buddha said, well, I've overcome all my enemies. The enemies are defilements. And since I overcome all my enemies, I'm free from fear. Wherever I go, I have no worries. And then Sela continues, he tells the Buddha, or rather he tells his disciples now. He says, hear this, sirs, what the one with the eyes says. So he calls the Buddha the one with the eyes. So in other words, the Buddha is not only able to see reality, he has other powers. The surgeon or the dart remover, the great hero, he roars like a lion in the wood. Having become Brahma, unequal, crushes Mara's host. Having seen him, who wouldn't have faith? Even those born into a bad, lowly birth. Let him who wishes follow me, or who wishes not, let him go. Here I will go forth in the presence of the wisely noble one. So this is Sela's line raw. Okay, he says, all right, this is the Buddha. So those of you, if you want to follow me, I'm going to renounce the world under the Buddha. If you choose not to, you're free to go. So this is where you see Sela releasing all the conditions of a teacher and pupil. It says, now you're free. You can follow me or you can go your way. Right? Now what's interesting here, let's look at some of the things that Sela says. He says that the Buddha is Brahma, unequal. Right? Now, Brahma has two senses. One is the Brahma, the high God, and Brahma can also mean perfect in a sense that man perfected, human having attained the highest state possible. Today we use the word highly evolved or highest evolved, unequal. I wouldn't put Buddha as Brahma in the sense of great Brahma, because if you read the miraculous life of the Buddha, or of Gautama Buddha, you find that when Mara appears and threatened to attack the Buddha, all the gods, including Mahabrahma, disappears. It's very interesting. The storyteller says that the gods are so terrified, they disappear below the horizon. It's like they're peeping over the horizon and say, wow, there's a big fight, we better get away. So it's like those alien spaceships, if you like, which is a modern space story. They kind of get out of a bombardment range, so to speak. So the gods did not defend the Buddha. They did not fight Mara. So here again, it's not really a battle of the kind of a martial kind. We're talking about a battle between good and bad. It's the Buddha facing his karma. Okay, and you can read about all these really interesting aspects in the coming book, SD 52.1, which talks about this amazing internal battle that the Buddha has to fight with evil, so to speak. All right? So here, this Brahma is presenting the Buddha as someone who has attained the highest level of human evolution, spiritual evolution. All right. So he's telling his students, you can join me or you're free to live. Then the students reply, okay, I suppose the leader of the students, they reply, the brahmin will say, if the master approves of the teaching of the fully self-awakened, we too will go forth in the presence of the wisely noble one. So the students also say, well, we'll join you. All right? Well, usually the students will do that, follow the teacher. I mean, it's like their level of understanding does not go beyond the teacher. So the teacher is the wisest. So if the teacher says, okay, someone else is wiser, you follow that. You follow him, see? All right? Then Sela replies, these 300 Brahmins with palms together back of you, let us live the holy life, O Blessed One, in your presence. So they request for ordination. Notice there's not much formality here. They decide it's time, we want to become monks. So they tell the Buddha, we want to renounce the world. And then the Buddha ordains them. Now this next verse seems to show that this story can be placed during the first 20 years, but there's no ceremony here. The Buddha ordains, except the monks, very simply. The Buddha says, well taught is the holy life, O Sela, said the Blessed One. Sin here and now, nothing to do with time, where the going forth isn't empty for one who trains heedfully. Right? So here, by this statement, they become monks. So this is called the Ehi Bhikkhu Upasampada, the ordination by the Kamo monk formula. But notice, this formula is quite long. The Buddha says, describes the Dhamma, sin here and now, nothing to do with time. So in other words, they still need to train. Okay? They are not arahats yet. Because if they are arahats, the Buddha will just say one line, come O monks. Okay? And they are monks. Right? So they become monks and they got ordained. Now, I want you to get your bearings again. What is the location of this story? Sela becomes a monk. And remember, the Keniya has invited the Buddha for dana the next morning. He has not gone there yet, Okay? So how many extra guests are there here now? 300 more. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you got to add total 1,250 is about 1,800, right? Nearly 2,000. It's quite a big group. Anyway, don't worry, there's enough food. Okay. So a much bigger group goes the next morning to Keniya. I mean, Keniya's own friend and follower has converted, and then they have the meal, and the Buddha gives his blessing, a beautiful thanksgiving, verse 26. Now this blessing is very interesting. It has a bit of Brahminical language because there are lots of Brahmin present. So the Buddha says, the fire sacrifice is the chief of sacrifices. The Savitri is the chief of poetic meters. The king is the chief amongst humans. Of rivers, the ocean is the chief. So once it says this, those present, the lay people, they at once can relate. They say, wow, the Buddha knows our culture. See? Right? So this is from the known. The Buddha brings them to what he has to teach. Then next verse it says, of stars, the moon is the chief. The sun is the foremost of those that shine. For those who, desiring merit, sacrificed, the sangha is indeed the best. So this is the Buddhist teaching. It says if you want to sacrifice, yes, to you the fire is a great deity, but given to the monks the best. So this is the blessing the Buddha gave. And then the Sela takes leave of the Buddha, and they're going to retreat, they meditate, and then look at the 27, they become arahats. Like, a long time they became arahats, and then they come back to see the Buddha. Okay, and they notice 28, it says, and the Venerable Sela along with his retinue became arahats among others. Now comes the conclusion, Sela's lion roar. Now this sutta is called Sela Sutta because of this ending, section 29. Then the Venerable Sela, now he's called Venerable, along with his retinue, approached the Blessed One, arranging their robes so that they bow to the Buddha. Now this is their declaration to the Buddha that they are awakened. Since we went for refuge, 8 days have passed, O seeing one. In these 7 nights, Blessed One, we were tame in your teaching. Right? So they got enlightened, they awakened in 8 days. You are the Buddha, you are the teacher, you are the silent sage who conquered Mara, cutting off the latent tendencies. You have guided this generation across. Right? So this is his faith, it's praising the Buddha. You have gone beyond acquisitions. You have removed all influxes. In other words, all those things that enter through the senses and defile us. Like a lion free from clinging, you have abandoned fear and terror. Notice his way of talking is totally different now. No more talking of worldly power and worldly monarchs and so on. And then the last verse. These 300 monks stand with palms together. Extend your feet, O hero. Let the Nagas salute the teacher. Nagas here refers to the Arahats. And Nagas are like dragons. Nagas are like some kind of earth spirit, kind of regarded as very powerful. So they say, we come to show you our respect. This is the pupils' gratitude to the teacher. They have awakened, so they come back to announce their graduation and to show their respect to the Buddha. So the whole sutta ends here. Now there's another sutta called the Keniya Jatila Watu. This actually is from the Vinaya. It's not exactly a sutta. Oh, I wrote sutta there. It should be Watu. Correct that. Now, Watu you can translate as story or case. This Keniya Jatila Watu is just a story about how Keniya, now Keniya didn't ordain, I think, so he remains as a lay person. And he was very moved by the Buddha, and he decides he says, what offering can I give to the Buddha? So many people are giving all kinds of offerings. So he says, why don't I give something that the monks can take in the evening? So he gives fruit juice. So he asked the Buddha, he said, okay, if I offer fruit juice to the monks. The monks did not accept it because there were no rules at that time to say whether they can take, for example, sugar cane drinks and those kind of fruit drinks without any solid content in the evening or in the outside the normal times. So this story is a case history to show that how the offering of fruit drinks to the monk in the evenings are allowed, like sugar cane drinks and so on, or some sweet drinks, especially if the monks are not well. So this is from the Vinaya, right? So just to tell you, and you notice the ending, the last 2 verses are similar to the blessing that the Buddha gave to Keniya during his alms offering. So it's possible that these 2 events are also closely interconnected, even overlapping. Right? So there you are. There's quite a drama of Keniya and Sela, how Sela hears the word Buddha and he joins to become a monk. Right? All right, any questions or...
Page 69, they talk about
what section is that? Section?
A great man has 2 destinies.
Oh yes. What section is that?
Either he lives in a house or he becomes an Āpaṇa. 10.2, page 69.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, go on. So what's your question?
69.
Yeah, I got it.
So say that a great man has two destinies.
Yes.
Either he lives in a house or becomes an Āpaṇa. The chap who lives in the house, there are 7 jewels.
Yeah.
My question is, these 7 jewels, do they signify anything?
Oh yes, of course. Right. So this is the famous prediction that the newborn child Siddhartha, if he remains at home, he would become a great king. If he leaves home, he become a great teacher, world monarch or world teacher, a world renouncer. And if he remains as a king, like Alexander, you picture Alexander as easier, then he will have these 7, you can call them like regalia or 7 qualities or emblems of royalty. There is a sutta on this, the Lakkhana Sutta, okay, and a Mahasudassana Sutta, which talks in detail about all these qualities. This is what they call a mythology of kingship, sociology of kingship. In other words, even today, the traditional kings, like in Thailand, we know many traditional kings left. The Thai king is one of the last, I think. So there's a white elephant. He has a white elephant in Thailand, I see. I don't know whether he has a one right now or not. I mean, they're not easy to come by. This white elephant actually is an albino elephant. So they regard this as a symbol of royalty. And of course, for us, a white elephant means it's something difficult to upkeep, you know. It's because whenever the white elephant appears, the king is going to come along, and you better be on the best behavior. You be there to show your respect, you know. So it's quite troublesome in that sense. So these are the king's emblems of power. He has all these things, from martial power to worldly power to wealth, and he has all the weapons in the army and so on. So this 7 represents that. Okay, whereas in the case of the Buddha, it's the 7 jewels, which represents stages of meditation. It's different. So that is the world renouncer, world teacher. So I hope that answers your question.
This doesn't apply to just anybody.
No, there's only one person. Yeah. Just that, like Alexander the Great, you know, for example. Yeah, one who's going to be world ruler. He has this. These are his emblems. So,
inquiring is to call such a person primo inter pares.
First among equals.
First among equals.
Yeah. That's the Buddha. That would be the Buddha. Yeah, I mean, it's nice for him to use a word, but of course, people still respect him. The Buddha, in the Sambuddha Sutta, you can say effectively, it can be summarized in that one line, primo inter pares, okay? In the sense that the Buddha declares there's no difference between his awakening and the awakening of the Arahats. The only difference is that the Buddha arises first, primo, okay? The other monks follow his teaching. So they're equal. So that the Latin term fits very well in that sense, right? But things change in the Mahayana. It became very different, all right? So, because when it comes to awakening, you can't really measure, there's no status. You're either free or not free, is it? Right? So, there's the Sambuddha Sutta. Okay, any other questions or feedback?
I just want to know, this word Buddha, from the way I read the Sutta, it would seem that this word Buddha was already in use in the lingo of the time.
Of course.
Was.
Yes. There are many words. You can say the majority of the words, over 90% of the words the Buddha used already there. The word Buddha simply means someone who's awakened, who understands, right? Bujjati, Bujjati, Bodheti. But we don't hear, up to the Buddha's time it was very common. But after the Buddha's time you find the use is forgotten, but the Buddhists kind of made it very famous. So today we think, oh, only the Buddha, it's as if the Buddha invented the word. But the Buddha gave him the full meaning, right? Even the word Arahat, you know. The Jains also call their saints Arahat, you know, but the meaning is different. I mean, just like in religions today, we talk of faith. All religions talk of faith, but then different religion, different definition of faith. We don't think of that faith as having any religion. Right? Of course, today you don't find so many common words, but there are some, a few, like heaven, but you got different definitions. So the word Buddha is a common usage term. But after Buddha's time, we associate it with the Buddha. That is why, to be certain, we're talking about the Buddha. He is called Sambuddha or Sammasambuddha. Or the complete title would be Itipiso Bhagava Arahang, and so on. All the what they call 9 virtues are listed. That is his full protocol, if you like. Okay, yeah. So yes, that the word was common during his time. It is understandable that the Buddha would use a word which is already well known rather than invent a new word, so that people can connect easily. Any other feedback? Yes? Yeah, sure.
Next page, page 17.
Give me the section, please.
Page 17, paragraph 13.3.
Okay.
Sela, the brahmin saw 32 marks except 2.
Yes.
And later on, it says that one of them is the long tongue of the Buddha.
Yes.
And he licks himself all over.
Yeah.
Then the other one is the sheath covered, hidden by clothing. I don't understand.
All right. Okay, this is a bit of embarrassing. I was trying not to mention this directly. The 32 marks, as I said, is the mark of a human, a human mark. And not just human, it's also a mark of a perfect man who is going to be king and conqueror, and is going to have 1,000 children, So 30 marks can be seen, for example, the face, the teeth, the long arms, and so on. The cloth covered is private member. Yeah, so it's a sign, it's an ancient way of talking that he will have lots of children who is able to support him. And these are important. You know that kings, even in Thailand, before the absolute monarchy was abolished, the kings had, a few hundred wives. Because he needs that loyal army. And what better to have wives, So it's a political strategy among the kings of ancient times. So this one, the other is the tongue is hidden, see? So he couldn't. So these two things he couldn't notice. So he had a little doubt. So the story goes, the Buddha made him see in his mind. I mean, this is for the sake of decency. Okay. So be silly in another way. So you find some of these stories do have their humorous aspects. It brought to too much extreme, isn't it? Yeah. And you see, the Buddha's arm is very long, and if you look at the only picture you see is not the Sakyamuni, but in Amitabha. You look at Amitabha's picture, the arms are inordinately long, touching the knees. If that actually is the case, you see the Buddha looks very different. He wouldn't look human. Because arms were very long, touching the knees. Years long, okay, it's not so extraordinary, I've seen some people from Nepal with long ears also. They kind of, I don't know how they do it, but I've seen that. So, anyway, these are external marks which the Buddha doesn't stress much on. It's the people who are not Buddhists, they're impressed with this kind of external features of the Buddha.
In fact, I've heard people saying this. The Buddha was an alien.
There are all kinds of stories. You find he was an African and all this, So whatever it is, when you go back to the teaching, you find, does it work for me or not? That's the important thing, right? Yeah. Yes. Anything else?
Just as a matter of observation.
Okay.
When we talk about the universal monarch having a beautiful queen, and of course there are lots of children.
Yeah.
And his organ here, must be manifestly unusual. It has struck me actually for quite some time that you look at many of the recent presidents of America is the universal monarch in that sense. Don't have the qualities
I wouldn't count the present president, of course.
But anyway, they are number one ruler. I noticed this. Many people don't have real heirs.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
You see Bush, you see Obama, Clinton.
But remember, they were elected, you see. Whereas these kings, they seem to arise by their own cognizance, so to speak, by their own quality. See? They were not elected. Although there is a story in the Āpaṇa Sutta where the first so-called king was called the Great Elect, because those early times, I don't know when it probably early Iron Age maybe, or late Stone Age, I don't know, where there were so many people and they found there's a lot of crime, there was no order, so they decide everybody has to work, so they say, okay, we need someone to sacrifice his time to make sure that there's no crime. So if this person takes over this role, then he can't look for food. So it's okay, then we will provide you with all the food and so on. So you begin to see the starting of exchange, economics, and the beginning of institutions. It's a very interesting story. Yeah, this is called an etiological story. So that first person was called Mahasamatha, the Great Elect. So he's said to be the first king. All right? And he's described very much like the great king also. Is the handsomest, the most powerful, the most moral amongst them, So he became the first king. This was, of course, millions of years ago. So this again is a mythology of kingship. Okay? Anything else? That's all, Alright, so I hope you learned something and enjoy this story. Remember the teaching here is about seeing the Buddha and what happens to us, we change. And what should we really look in the Buddha? What should we see in ourselves so that we too can follow his path and be awakened? Alright, let us close this study with a short reflection. Today, even as we gather here on Sundays, the Buddha is still within our living memory. We have a very clear idea of who he is or what he is, and we can follow him. And this is very important to see the Buddha as he would want us to see him, so that we can progress on the path of awakening. Reflecting in this way is very good karma, but the power of this karma and the virtue of the three jewels, let us cultivate loving kindness towards ourselves, that we may be blessed with happiness, good health, and the wisdom and courage to aspire at least to attain stream winning in this life itself. And by the same token, by the goodness of the three jewels, let us send out our loving kindness for the blessing of everyone here, especially those who come here seeking support and healing. May they be well and happy. Then those who sacrifice their time and work here for the good of the Dharma, may they be well and happy too. And all those who are practicing the Buddha's teaching and seeking the truth, may they too be well and happy and attain awakening in this life itself. And those who are lost and seeking answers, may they quickly find liberation in this life too. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.